You are under oath, Mr. Patel. Those words hit differently when aimed at someone who once promised to expose every Epstein file but suddenly went silent when Trump's name appeared. What you're about to see is Congresswoman Jayapal methodically dismantling Kash Patel's credibility as he refuses to answer whether sexual abuse survivors are credible witnesses, the same survivors he claims don't exist.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Meng, Chairman Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. And thank you, Mr. Patel, for your testimony and for being here today. I've been looking at the President's 120-word FBI budget request, the so-called skinny, I'll call it Ozempic request, that states that, quote, the undoing of the weaponization of the FBI is one of the administration's top priorities. The weaponization of the FBI is something that deeply concerns me. It should concern all of us. And yet, since taking office, President Trump has been on a revenge tour. He has targeted individuals, universities, law firms, with executive orders to cut them out or to make them come under his will. He has used ICE to disappear U.S. citizens without due process, and he's fully ignored a unanimous Supreme Court order, and then over the weekend wasn't sure if he was obligated to uphold the Constitution of the United States. In your book, your recent book, Government Gangsters, you include an appendix with a list of names that people have referred to as an enemies list. Now, I know you will claim it's just an appendix, not an enemies list. So let's focus on how the president sees it, on what the president calls it. And you proudly display his quote on the front cover of your book. The president calls this a brilliant roadmap, a blueprint. And I have not even raised your storied children's book, The Plot Against the King. It concerns me how many people from this blueprint have been targeted with executive orders and FBI investigations. The FBI cannot be weaponized, and under your leadership, it has been nothing but a weapon alongside the president to go after the president's perceived opponents, to stifle dissent and free speech. A few weeks ago, as we saw through a social media post that you quickly deleted, the FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin for correctly asking ICE officials if they had a judicial warrant instead of an administrative warrant, which they did not have. Despite this judge following the law, on the morning of April the 25th, the FBI arrested the judge in an escalation of the weaponization of the FBI under your leadership. Let me be clear. A functioning democracy does not lock up judges. I am gravely concerned about the utter lack of independence of the FBI and its weaponization under your leadership. I am concerned that the president is using this book, your book, as a blueprint, as he has said. It's a blueprint for revenge. And I am concerned that your eagerness, a childlike giddiness to carry out the president's revenge tour, you've shown yourself to be unserious in your statements before you were sworn in and some after. You've shown yourself unfit to lead this important agency. I was an impeachment manager for President Trump's second impeachment. It was a sad, solemn duty. And so I wanted to ask you about that. Mr. Patel, as you and the president continue to weaponize and investigate his perceived enemies, as you follow this blueprint, when can I, a former impeachment manager, expect the FBI at my door?
Ma'am, you want to know who was targeted by a weaponized FBI? Me. You want to know how and why?
Well,
you want to know what I'm doing to fix it?
That. Let me move on.
Well, you should read the
topics.
book because there's no enemies list on that book.
So
there are
you-
people that violated their constitutional obligations and their duties to the American people,
That's good. You
and they
gave
were
them due
rightly
process.
called out.
I'm
And
changing
you should
topics.
give that book to every one of your constituents so they can read about it.
I won't be doing that.
That's their loss.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6 insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier. despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times, and you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury.
Veracity?
Tell the American
You didn't
people how
know-
I broke the law and committed a felony.
You
Have the audacity to actually
No,
put the
all
facts
right, then
forward
the answer is
instead of
both.
lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second
answer
donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
The
men and
answer is
women of
you're
the,
failing,
Excuse me,
not
I
me.
reclaim my time.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patel, I believe that the members of the FBI, and I know many of them, many retired, 38,000 people, as you say, it's a little less than that now, deserve the very best, deserve extraordinary independence, deserve freedom from the fears of being investigated, the freedom of coming forward to make sure they're doing their job. And I'll end with this, that I think it's interesting that in your proposal today, you find yourself at a gulf of difference between you and the president. I wonder how you will resolve that. Will you go to the president and say, we need $11.2 billion, not what you cut out of here? You're asking for more than $1 billion than the president's request. Are you going to go to the president and straighten out that gulf?
I'll do what I've always done and represent the American people, defend this country, and make sure the Constitution is always upheld and the FBI is never weaponized. Maybe you should do the same.
So you agree with the president when he says he doesn't know if he should uphold his constitutional duty?
If you want to just keep putting words in my mouth, the TV cameras are outside.
I thank you. I yield back. Again, this is an unserious moment, sadly, for the FBI. I yield back.
More so for you.
Mr. Strong.
What Congresswoman Jayapal accomplished in this hearing wasn't just political theater. It was a masterclass in exposing institutional betrayal through methodical questioning. She didn't rely on grandstanding or speculation. Instead, she built a timeline that reveals how someone's principles can evaporate the moment they conflict with political loyalty. Patel's transformation from Epstein Files crusader to gatekeeper is documented in his own words. In September 2023, he told Glenn Beck that the FBI was hiding Epstein's black book under direct control of the director. By December, he was demanding transparency about who the pedophiles are. Even after becoming FBI Director in February 2025, he tweeted about leaving no stone unturned and promised Joe Rogan in June that we're going to give you every single thing we have. Then came July. Suddenly, after uncovering 300 gigabytes of data, Patel and Attorney General Bondi declared the investigation complete with minimal disclosure. The Wall Street Journal reported that Bondi had informed Trump his name appeared in the files during the same meeting where DOJ decided against release. When Jayapal asked if Patel knew about this conversation, he refused to answer, a telling silence from someone who once demanded radical transparency. The survivor credibility issue exposes something even more troubling. Jayapal brought up women who testified about being groomed and raped at 14 and 16 years old. Survivors who came to Congress seeking justice. When asked directly whether these survivors were credible, Patel couldn't give a straight yes or no answer. Instead, he deflected to Obama and Biden administrations, claiming they had the same evidence and made the same determinations. This deflection reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how survivor testimony works in trafficking cases. Survivors often take years to come forward, and their ability to provide credible information depends heavily on whether investigators create an environment of trust. By dismissing their credibility while simultaneously claiming to welcome new information, Patel created an impossible standard: survivors must be credible to be heard, but they can't be deemed credible without being heard. The institutional implications extend beyond a single case. When law enforcement leaders promise transparency during confirmation hearings but reverse course once in power, it signals that political calculations trump investigative integrity. Career agents and prosecutors notice these signals. They learn that certain cases carry career risks, that certain evidence might be too sensitive to pursue, and that their professional obligations can be overruled by political considerations. Jayapal's questioning also highlighted the role of media accountability. Patel made his transparency promises on high-profile platforms, Glenn Beck, Joe Rogan, Twitter. These weren't private conversations or classified briefings. They were public commitments designed to build credibility with specific audiences. When those same platforms don't follow up on broken promises, they become complicit in the accountability gap. The hearing's chaotic ending, with interruptions and procedural disputes, actually reinforced Jebba's point. Patel's inability to simply say yes, survivors are credible, or no, they are not, suggests someone more concerned with legal liability than moral clarity. For an FBI director, that's a problem. The Bureau's effectiveness depends on public cooperation, and cooperation requires trust that investigations follow evidence rather than political convenience. This moment matters because it crystallizes a broader question about institutional independence. Can agencies maintain credibility when their leaders' public positions shift based on political pressure? The answer affects not just Epstein-related investigations, but every case where power and politics intersect. When citizens see officials abandon stated principles for political expediency, they stop believing that justice is blind. And once that trust erodes, it's extraordinarily difficult to rebuild. The survivors Jalpal mentioned deserve better than evasive answers about their credibility. The public deserves better than promises broken when investigations become politically inconvenient. And democratic institutions deserve leaders who understand that transparency isn't just a campaign promise. It's a professional obligation that doesn't disappear when the cameras stop rolling.